Hey, how's everyone doing today? This is your co-host, Dervin with Synonyms of Sound.
And this is your second co-host, Tony. And I'd like to introduce Nancy Madoff. How's it going?
Awesome. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're doing great.
Very well, very well.
Just want to let the audience know I just recently picked up her book. Hadn't fully started yet, but all the reviews online have been amazing. And very excited to get into the details about this book because I feel it can help everyone that's in corporate America. But before getting into the book and your transition from working in a sales role to what you're doing today, would love to know a little bit about your experience working at Marriott for 25 years and how has that helped you where you are today?
I loved working. Well, first of all, let me start by thanking you both for having me on the show. I love anything and everything that talks about focusing and blocking out noise, stepping into your strengths, owning who you are, because I believe that the minute you do that, you become authentic and you will never look back. So I love it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
But back to Marriott. So I worked for Marriott for 25.2 years. Absolutely loved it. I had an amazing career. Literally traveled the world. I have nothing but great things to say about the company. They taught me how to sell. They taught me how to be a great leader. They taught me how to have a family across borders. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. It was fantastic.
Amazing. What was one interesting place that you went traveling for work?
My two favorite and most interesting, I don't have one, unfortunately, are Thailand and Dubai. Those were by far, maybe Hong Kong too. Those are my favorite.
Those are good.
Those are on my list.
Yeah, they're so cool. I actually love Thailand so much I went back on my honeymoon.
Oh,
A few times. Yep, went back on my honeymoon and been to Dubai a couple times. It's pretty crazy. It's a crazy, crazy wild spot. I love it. Love it.
So
I'd imagine you probably.
Go on there.
What's that?
I was gonna ask. I'd imagine you probably have some sort of lifetime benefit through Marriott now that makes traveling a little easier.
So Marriott, it's a great question. They are very good to their employees. You do have a benefit after 25 years that you can stay at discounted rates if the hotels are available. To be truthful, I have not done that since the pandemic. I know how the industry was demolished. I probably won't be using it for a little while, but I hope to someday use those rates again. I've had some good times using those rates.
Awesome.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying earlier that I went to Hong Kong twice, and it's an amazing city. Beautiful architecture. People are very friendly, so I had a great time out there.
Loved it.
All right, so I don't know where I want to start. I feel like I've heard some interesting statistics you've shared about salary gaps and amount of money women leave on the table, and I think that might be a good way to start things off, and then diving into your book if you don't mind. Or would you prefer to give us a quick overarching view of what the book is all about first?
I can give you a 30-second view of what the book is about. And then it's your show. You should do whatever you want. The book is about how to speak up, stand out, and step up. And I like to say the book is designed for, but not exclusive for women. A lot of men have read the book. I do some coaching, plenty of men. So it's really about how to overcome your fear of speaking up, overcome conversation gender bias, overcome imposter syndrome, and we can talk about that in a minute because you might be surprised with my view in that. And really speak up and then step up. And the step up part is where women and men need to continue to amplify women because they simply do not speak up as much as their male colleagues do.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I don't know if Tony shared our backgrounds, but we have recruiting backgrounds in big tech.
Okay.
I'm very passionate about underrepresented groups and things of those sorts. And I guess one of my biggest takeaways that I'm hoping to get from this conversation is various different ways where with some of the folks I engage with in the tech space, how I can encourage them to speak up and let them know that I'm here to advocate for them, especially when it comes to compensation and things of those sorts. Because these companies are willing to pay, and it's seeing the data. It's it's mind blowing that there's some underrepresented folks who aren't speaking up when they should.
Yeah.
I love it. And I would say, we'll get into it, but I would say just what you said to me. Tell them I'm here for you. I'm here to help advocate for you. When you talk about salary, it's interesting because I do a lot of public speaking. And every now and then a company will come to me and say, we really want you to tell people to speak up, but we kind of don't want you to hone in too much on salary negotiations, right? It's kind of funny because I'm like, okay, I won't, but understand that everything in this book, people are going to gain the confidence, gain the clarity, and be able to articulate their value. And I'm not saying that people or women should automatically get right-sized in terms of their salaries, because a lot of times they are not asking for it. And that, to me, is what we don't talk about enough. So there's this male patriarchy, and that does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's the women who are holding themselves back more often than an actual glass ceiling. And there's tons of data to support that.
Wow, that's a very interesting perspective. And I want to make sure that we touch on that for sure. But something you talked about, imposter syndrome, and I think Dervin and I, or at least I'll speak for myself, I've felt imposter syndrome working at Facebook. Where I didn't think I had the skills to be there. I felt I was not level appropriately. So let me hear your perspective of imposter syndrome, because I know you mentioned that you have your own take on what that is all about.
So thank you. And I love that you said I have imposter syndrome, because I think if you were to go out there and ask 10 women if they think imposter syndrome only happens to women, I would bet you 9 out of 10 say, yes, it only happens to women. And that is simply not true. And I remember I was in New York City meeting with a friend of mine who's a big executive with a big hotel company. And I was explaining to him what I do. And he just got this look on his face. And I said, women they feel like they don't deserve the seat at the table. They feel like people are going to find out they're a fraud. They feel like that, any minute the house of cards is going to fall down and they're going to be revealed. And he just looked at me and he said, you think men don't feel that way? Everybody feels that way. And I was blown away. My whole life, I had thought it was only a female thing. So my view is, A, it happens to men and women. B, the difference here is that the men will feel it and act anyway. The women will feel it and it will hold them back. So I'm going to put a pin in that for a second. No, I'm going to let that sit for a second, because I do have some ways to overcome it. And even so, I get nervous before a speaking gig. Every one of them I get a little nervous, but I've trained myself over the past several years to take that nervous energy and turn it into excited energy. And that's the difference. My granddaughter, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. I know I don't look like I do, but I do. And she has her first dance recital. And she said, I'm really nervous. She's 4 years old. She said, I'm really nervous. And I said, okay, honey, well, what you're feeling is nervous energy. So what about if we were to work on maybe, instead of being nervous, trying to just be a little more excited? Just maybe try to be a little more excited. And then I saw her a couple of weeks later and I said, how are you feeling about the recital? And she said, I'm a little nervous, but I'm also excited. I'm like, okay, that's a win. Yes. So as we get closer and closer, what I'm teaching her is what I teach my clients. You can pause for a minute and turn that nervousness into excitement, and that makes all the difference in how you show up.
Awesome. I think that's amazing. I like that approach. And I know you mentioned something about women holding themselves back. And I remember hearing statistics or something that I've heard somewhere where a man would apply to a job if they're 50% hitting all the requirements. A woman needs to apply when it's either 90 or 80%. Is that what you're talking about, holding them back? And can you give us the psychological, crippling effect that women feel when it comes to putting themselves out there?
Sure. That number is close, and depending on which study you look at, it's going to be a different number. So basically, the message there is that women will not apply for the job unless they are 100% qualified, whereas the man will take the bigger risk. That's proven up and down everywhere you go. And I actually have a story, if I can share it. It's from the book. It's a real life story.
Yeah, please do.
I have a friend. He's an entrepreneur, and he was building his company, and it's a blood cleaning company. Not very sexy, but very important. And for whatever reason, he felt that a female would be better in the role of CEO. And actually, I know why, because he believed females have a more collaborative mindset and approach. And he felt that in some of the underdeveloped countries, a female would have a better shot at building relationships and collaborating, and a female CEO would be better received in some of the underdeveloped countries who need this clean blood. So he said, I want a woman. He came over for dinner. He said, I'm looking for a woman. I said, wow, that's awesome. Like, how's it going? He said, can't get one. Everyone that I call, he would pick up the phone and call these women and say, I'd like you to apply for the CEO job. Every single one of them said, me? CEO? I could never be. I said, what do you mean? I'm not qualified to be a CEO. The owner of the company called them and said, I want you as my CEO. And their initial reaction was, I'm not qualified. Are you sure I can do it? And not one of them went for the job. Not one of them went for the job.
Wow. That's interesting.
Right? So then and that was a few years ago. So if you take it a little more recent, Korn Ferry just did a study of 60 female CEOs. And I don't want to misquote the number. I'll look it up in a second. But I think over half of them, or 60% of them maybe, didn't have CEO on their radar. Not even on their radar. And you know how it got on their radar?
Wow.
The men. Somebody, a male colleague, said, you need to put that on your radar. You need to get in the P&L position, which is going to get you closer to CEO. They weren't even thinking about it. That's recent. That was last year.
Allyship. That's important. We all need allies.
What is causing this?
Right. I love Derek. He's like, yeah, okay, allies, yes, but let's go back to the root of the issue, which is, it's if you look at it, it is how women are socialized. It's how they're rewarded younger. It's getting better. I mean, it's getting much, much better. You look at sports now versus sports 40 years ago, it's significantly different, much different. And again, like I said, the women lack the confidence and they let it hold them back, whereas the men lack the confidence, but they do it anyway, because all their lives it's been be tough, go for it, rise to the challenge, do it anyway. I mean, it's simply how the two genders in the past have been socialized.
That's an interesting point that you talk about sports, because I've recently realized if you watch Sports Center or any sports like TV casts, there's now a woman there. Before it used to be all men, but now there's a lot more women, at least one woman and like maybe 4 or 5 guys. I think that the ratio is still way off. But now at least there's a woman involved in that conversation, because before it was always a panel of men. So I do agree with you. In sports, it is being a little bit more diversified. And I'm excited to wait till a female head coach gets to the NFL, the NBA. I think that's going to be a really big turning point. But I do think that as a man, what is a good way for us to be an ally? I feel like the word ally has been tossed out a lot because of a lot of things that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years. But how do you set yourself up to be truly an ally to support your female counterparts?
I love that question, and I'm so glad you asked it. The first thing I would say, and I'll tell you why after I say it, the first thing I would say is do not hold yourself back because you don't want to compete with a woman. That is not what I am saying. I was on a call, a virtual session 6 months ago maybe, and this was a session where there were a few men in the audience, and one of them said, I'm going for a job, and so is my female colleague. What should I do? We're going for the same job. Well, you should go for the job and give the job your best shot, and I hope you get it. And that's awesome. I can only speak for myself. I am not saying take a step back. What men can do is when they do have the floor, or they are invited to a meeting, or they do see a female being spoken over in a meeting, because it happens to women more than men, that you pause and amplify. So amplify is the word that I like to use. So it could be...
We like that word too.
Yeah, I love it. So let's say Derv is in a meeting and I'm in the same meeting and a male that's attending the meeting talks over me, or anybody talks over me. then an ally, either Dirk or Tony, would say, hang on just a second, Mike, Nancy was talking and I want to let her finish her thought. I mean, it's that easy. Or, hey, Nancy, I know you had some thoughts on that last week, and we didn't quite get to them. I know you brought it up last week, but we didn't really continue that conversation. I want to go back to that. Or, I think, Nancy had that idea a couple weeks ago. Was that what you meant, Nancy? Because now Mike's saying it, and now everybody's listening. But when Nancy said it 2 weeks ago, no one was listening.
Mm-hmm. I'm now thinking about how many times I've probably never done this. And
this is fine. Yeah, true.
Listen, women don't either. I have a friend who was just promoted, and she was telling me she went from a mostly female team to a mostly male team. She was telling me about how oftentimes the men will talk over the women, and I said, well, what are you doing about it? She's like, well, what do you mean, what am I doing about it? I said, well, you're the boss. What are you doing about it? What are you doing? Are you pulling the female aside after the meeting and saying, hey, Megan, I know you had a lot to contribute at that meeting. Why didn't you speak up? How can I make sure you speak up more? Or pulling Mike, poor Mike, I keep calling the offender Mike, pulling Mike aside and saying, Mike, you might not realize you're doing this, but you really talk over women a lot.
Yeah.
I do that with my husband a lot. I did it with him last night. I did. I said, you're not letting her talk, honey. You're not letting her speak. It's interesting. It's interesting.
That's interesting.
Is there any advice you could give to, I was going to say someone, but me? I mean, I have a younger sister. She's the youngest. The rest of us are all boys. It's 5 of us in total. She's in school now and going to start her career soon. And I guess I feel like we've done a good job. But how do I? I'm sorry. I'm trying to just think of the question and how how do I tell her to stay confident and aside from saying stay confident, it sounds easier said than done. I feel. I guess how do I be encouraging and consistent and appropriate as well? I feel like sometimes if allyship is done the wrong way, it's easy to come across disingenuous, and that's a concern of mine.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I would say don't overthink it, and I can tell by the look on your face this is really important to you, and I think you might be overthinking it. I would say, what's her name? Your sister?
Darnella.
First, I would tell Darnella to buy my book, and then I would say, I would ask her. I'd say, Darnella, how's it going for you? Do you find that the men are talking over you in meetings, or, are you nervous about presenting your ideas? I would just ask her, how's it going? She might not have any issues. She might be fine. She might be like, no, I'm good. All set. Thank you, though. But she might say, I was in a meeting last week, or this one guy keeps doing this, or I'm afraid nobody wants to hear what I have to say, or, I don't know how to bring up my ideas with confidence. There is no one fell swoop. It's how does she feel about it and where does she need help? And then you're a natural. You'll be able to help her. You'll be able to help her. But I would ask.
Starts with the question.
Right.
So in regards to pay, I feel that there's always been this conversation of the different pay gaps between men and women. I recently heard somewhere that a man, if given a salary, would normally try to negotiate. A woman would more likely not negotiate and just take the first offer. Could you talk a little bit more about that, the statistics around that, and why is that even a thing? Like, maybe because I'm a recruiter, I just know you always ask for more money and figure it out. So I don't think that would be something I'd ever not do, but just would love to learn more about that.
Okay, so I'm writing down that you, as a recruiter, said to always ask for more money.
Yes, of course.
I'd be shocked at how many people don't. And when I coach people on this, I say, well, do you think they're going to pull the job offer back if you ask for more money? I would say ask for more money, tell them why you're worth it, show them why you're worth more money. So yeah, the current wage gap, I think the last number was 82 cents on the dollar. It might be 86 cents on the dollar. That number changes based on, how the most recent survey. And it is because women will accept less than men. And in many cases, they're not even asking for more. One of the studies that I used in my book is from 2010, actually. It's pretty old. And the number then was that men will earn 20% more than their female colleagues when they graduate from graduate school. So they will, off the bat, get more money because they ask for it. And I'm going to give you another story because I think people remember stories.
I love stories.
Blew my mind. I was sitting in the New York Marriott Marquis. I was not working for Marriott at the time. I was at the Nyu Investors Conference. So this is a big conference where all of the hotel investors come in. It's massive. It's held every year. I don't want to speak for them. It's probably 98% male. You look around, it's investors. And there's a random female here or there. So I was sitting talking with a woman I had just met. She was the managing director of a commercial real estate firm, okay, that specializes in hotel real estate. She asked me what I did, and I told her. This was before I had written my book. And she said, it would be great for you to talk with my daughter. She's graduating, and I want her to learn how to advocate for herself. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to talk to her. And whatever. And then about 10 minutes later, we're sitting there, and this woman, her face stricken.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what, are you okay? What's wrong? She said, oh my God, I just realized she had gone from one firm to another firm, big firms. You would know them if I mentioned them. She said, and I didn't negotiate my salary. She said, I negotiate million and billion dollar deals for a living, and I did not ask for more money. And it was a total mic drop moment. It didn't even occur to her. And she's the managing director of a major commercial real estate firm. When it comes to ourselves, more often than not, women will back away from advocating. Now, here's what's interesting. When it comes to others, women will advocate or negotiate for others. And that's a tactic that I use to train women to negotiate their salaries is think about what it's going to mean for your family. Think about what it's going to mean for your kids if you can get 10% more. Think about that's going to be compounded over the years, what that's going to mean. Think about what it'll mean for your team if you can get this extra person on your team, if you're trying to marshal some resources. Think about others and how what you're asking for will impact others, and that helps quite a bit. That definitely is a tactic that helps.
So I've actually got a Bloomberg article up here. The article is from last year, but the title was staggering. So it says, men got higher pay, and this is specific to big tech jobs. Men got higher pay than women 59% of the time for the same tech jobs. Female candidates for tech jobs received wages 3% lower than their male counterparts. This is from a Hired survey. And they have more data based on the market. In London, men have 10% higher pay compared to 5% in San Francisco Bay Area and 7% in New York. But just that 59% number is so big. And the year before that, it was 65%. So it has decreased a bit, but not drastically. So it's like, where did we go wrong here that this gap has been able to grow so substantially? Because these numbers are insane. And being in recruiting, I didn't realize it was this bad.
Yeah. So is this new hires? Is this new hires or a general number?
Durbin, is it new hires or general number?
Sorry,
I think you might
froze for a second.
bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a general number.
Okay. So there's a couple of things. There's two numbers that we look at. One is new hires, and that's about women advocating for themselves and asking for more money. The other is an average. When you look at an average, what you have to look at is many times women will take themselves out of the workforce traditionally to stay at home and take care of and raise the family. So that's going to impact the wage gap no matter what. You've taken a step out. It's a strategic decision. That's fine. And that's more often than not the norm. For the women, and I hate to laugh, but I see it so much. For the women advocating for themselves, I teach at a university. I used to teach at Boston University. Every single one of my female students would be like, what do you mean? What do you mean I should ask for more money? You should ask for more money. And whereas my male students were like, oh yeah, I'm asking for more money. And the women were like, what do you mean I should ask for? They were afraid they're going to get rejected. They're afraid the job's going to get pulled back. They're afraid. It's aversion to risk, and it's significant. It's significant, as you stated.
Do you think there should be, I guess, more emphasis in college and graduate school curriculum? Just kind of, I guess, for folks coming out of school trying to get their career start, making sure they're aware of what these statistics look like. It may have changed since I've been in school, but I feel there isn't enough discussion around this at the collegiate level, which might be helpful. And though I'm not saying all women or folks professionally, they all have a collegiate background, but I still think it might be helpful if there was more of a discussion at that level there.
I mean, I think that would be great. I think college students need life skills training. How to change a tire, how to negotiate your salary, how to fill out an insurance form. I mean, a lot of these college graduates, they graduate and they're like, well, now what? How to navigate in a new city. So I do think that would be of incredible value. But and I want to go back to that statistic, Dirk, because I saw this a couple times during and at the end of International Women's Day. And I didn't know how I felt about it, but part of me just kind of sat back and gave myself like a little smirk. There were quite a few very well-known women out there who said, I love all these companies that are advocating for International Women's Day. Let's see your gender wage gap. Stop posting on Twitter. And the same as you're paying your men. So
that would be really interesting.
Really interesting. So you can put a post up there, and and a lot of companies walk the talk and stand behind their women's diversity and inclusion initiatives. Many of them, and they're great business partners. Some of them whitewash it or put it out there, and you're like, okay, well, your women are making 30-40% less than the men. So really, how are you celebrating women? So once a year, or are you doing it all year round?
That's a good point, because I was looking at this article. It said that women make up about 47% of the workforce, but only 27% are in leadership positions or management positions. So it is pretty interesting. And I think those numbers are even fewer when it comes to big tech. So it just really comes interesting. And then there's one other note, and then I'll let you answer whichever order you want. I know you talked about compound over time. So I heard a statistics that said that Caucasian women leave X amount of dollars on the table over their careers. Black women live like X amount. I think you may know the numbers. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yep. So that's compounding. So for a Caucasian female, it's 400,000-ish. For a woman of color, I think it's like 750, 650. And this is in the book. And for a Latina woman, it's in the 7 to 8, maybe even 900s. So take the wage gap, 84 cents on the dollar, whatever that is. It doesn't sound that bad. I mean, it's bad, of course, but all right, 80 cents, okay. Times that over a 40-year career, compound it. I mean, it's absurd.
It's a lot on the table.
So, so I have another story. I was leading a sales team when I worked for Marriott, actually, and there was a program in place where if you met certain thresholds, you would automatically be submitted for a promotion. And this one woman on my team, she made her numbers every year. She never would follow up. She never would go for the promotion. She lacked the confidence. And she would say to me, well, it's only a 2% raise or whatever the number was. This story's in the book as well. And I sat down with her one day and I said, you and I are sitting down and we're taking a calculator out because for 5 years you have blown off this 2% raise. Now take that 2% and add it to last year's salary, and now add another 2% on that and add it to that year's salary. So the compounded 2%, she was leaving, I think, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on the table. So it's not 2%. It's not. That's a moment in time. You have to look at your whole salary and then how that compounds over the years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy stuff.
It's not good.
So what are your thoughts about the discrepancy in regards to like women in leadership when they make up a large portion of the workforce?
You know, it's interesting, Tony, because a lot of that can be rationalized away by women are stepping out. I don't know if either of you guys remember Sheryl Sandberg and her book Lean In. I mean, that was a huge book. And what she said was, lean out whenever you want, step out whenever you want, but don't count yourself out before you're ready to do that. You got to lean in before you step out. So there are some people that might rationalize that away as it's women strategically taking a step back. You know, what I've seen, I've even seen it with CEOs. I coach female CEOs, and I am blown away by their being paralyzed by their lack of confidence. And they are paralyzed by it. And it absolutely blows my mind, and they let it stand in their way. So I would say that number is probably a combination of strategic decisions made with your family to take a step back, with that they're not going for the jobs. I mean, look at the CEO example. They're not going for the jobs. They're not. The same friend, remember I told you about my friend who I asked her what she was doing in the meetings to amplify? So she was going for promotion, totally underconfident that she was qualified. So we worked on it together. And then a very, very senior level person in the company called her and said, I think you should go for the job that's the next job up. Forget this job. Go for the next job up, 2 levels higher. She was like, no, I can't. He said, well, you can and you are, because I set up the interview and you're meeting with so-and-so on this date. She never would have gone for it. She never would have gone for it because she was programmed to think, logical next step, follow the rules, what's next for me, don't take too much risk, I'm lucky I'm here. Whereas one of her male colleagues, you know, they just have the bravado. They would have been like, all right, I'll go for it. What do I have to lose? No problem. And they go for it and they get it.
Yes, makes sense. Makes sense.
And I can definitely see how that can contribute to the lopsided numbers in tech. Some companies kind of have a bro culture. So, oh man,
particularly tech. One of the first groups I spoke to when I started speaking on this was tech, and I follow women in tech very closely. But it's not. But yes, finance, same thing. That's a bro culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tech, finance, industrial supply. These are all so it's funny because I came from hospitality. Somebody asked me this last night. They said, so most of your clients are probably travel professionals. And I said, no, it's tech, it's finance, it's industrial supply, it's engineering, it's chemical, it's any underrepresented industry. Any female underrepresented industry wants and will have me come speak to their groups because they want to help these women step up and step into their strengths. And it's the ones that are mostly male dominated, and it's unfortunately most of them.
So I had a quick question, and I don't know if you may have the exact answer for it, but I know you mentioned women strategically stepping out to take time for their families. So if life is within the workplace can sometimes come across crippling to go for that promotion or to ask for that negotiation, how much more crippling is it after they take 4 years, 5 years off of work? They lost skills or they come across as not very skilled anymore because they don't have that 5 years of experience anymore because they were at home. How crippling is that motion to get back into the workforce? Or try to apply to where they left off, or do they automatically have to take a step below before where they were before? I would just love to know that.
It depends on how you leave and how you go out and what you did when you were out of the workforce. So did you spend 5 years only focusing on being a mother, which is fantastic, and that's why you left, so you should.
Mm-hmm.
Did you cut off all your friends and not your friends, but did you cut off all communications with your former company, or did you go out of your way to make it a point to stay in touch with some of those people and to continue to stay on their radar? I'm not saying to show up at the company retreat, but you can't pull yourself out of a network and then expect to just dive back in without it being a lot of work. But if you pull yourself out of a network and you keep, like an octopus, maybe you keep putting your tentacles out there and you keep checking in with people. I call it forensic networking.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a tool that I work on with my clients, whether they're in the workforce or not. It's, who do I know? Are they a coach? Are they a connector? Could they be a client? And really making a concerted, strategic, forensic effort to seek them out. So you can't step out and then just jump back in seamlessly. It takes a lot more work than that. And in fact, LinkedIn, you probably know this, LinkedIn just added a explanation for why there's a gap in your resume. So if you did take a step out, why there's a gap in your work experience, you could write, 2005 to 2010, voluntarily left the workforce to start a family, blah, 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 or voluntarily left to care for my aging parents, or whatever the case may be. So it's becoming more, it's becoming a little bit easier, but no, it's very tough. It's very tough. I mean, you're recruiters. Somebody comes to you that hasn't been in the workforce in 5 years. How excited are you going to be to hire them? Unless,
I get it.
Right?
I get it. I sometimes try to make a conscious effort to at least speak with them, and I try my best, but sometimes in the industry I work in, it's like a no-no because you just know it's not going to work. If you're internal, you could probably make it work, but if you're in the agency, it's like, I don't know, but I get it. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I try to make the conscious effort to help.
But what I would say is, if let's say there's a female listening to this and she's going out for 4 years, or she thinks she might want to go back to work in 2023, right? 2023, I think I might want to get back into the workforce. Start now. What's happening in the industry? What are the buzzwords? What are the trends? And start now reaching out to people, because you don't want to reach out to them in January and say, okay, I'm ready. You want to have reached out to them in June, in July, and at their birthday, whatever the case may be, so that the first time they're hearing from you, it's not for a favor.
I agree. Darby, you're on mute, sorry.
Unmute yourself.
I was just saying that makes so much sense. And I mean, in big tech, I feel that the technology trends probably change every 2 years or so. So to not stay up to date, not keep networking, I can definitely see how it could do you a disservice. I'm trying to jump back in, at least in the tech space for sure.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, it's tough. I have a lot of friends who left and they have no interest in coming back. I have some friends who left and they're terrified to come back. So, it's just like anything else. It's what's your plan and how can you start activating that plan strategically so that you're not paralyzed.
Yeah. So could you explain a little bit more about the Forensic 4? I know you mentioned a partner. You mentioned 4 different things. So could you
4?
Yes, or if maybe it was 3, can you just break that down a little bit more so that someone that may not be familiar can understand what that means and why it's important to have those different parallels?
So I call it forensic networking, and this is something that I did many years ago, and it worked great for me. So I knew at one point that I was going to leave Marriott. And, it was not a divorce, it was a graduation. I wanted to do something different.
Uh-huh.
So as I mentioned, I was traveling all over the place. So I took a spreadsheet and I wrote down everybody I knew. And then in the next column, I wrote down where in the world they were located. Chicago, New York, Boston. I was in a global job, so could have been anywhere. West Coast. And then the next column would be How important are they to me? Like in terms of my next step, 1, 2, 3, whatever. So then it was connector. So this is somebody that can connect me. This is somebody that can broker an introduction so that, at the time I wanted to do some sales consulting. So this is somebody that is still heavily in the sales arena and could broker an introduction. Coach was the second one. Are they a coach? That might be somebody who's a little older, maybe not as in it as they used to be, but knows a lot of people and probably wouldn't hire me themselves for whatever reason, but they can coach me. And then client, could they be a potential client? So when let's say I was going on a trip to Chicago, I would open up my spreadsheet sheet. I would sort on Chicago. Let's say 9 or 10 names came up, and I would make it a point to grab a cup of coffee with 2 or 3 of those people. Same thing for New York. Same thing and you can do it. I use this with my clients right now. I prettied it up and I branded it, and it's a lot more slick than my little one that I had. But I have a woman I was coaching who was getting ready to leave her company, and I said, okay, do a data dump of everyone you know. When you're on the train coming back from New York or whatever, write down in that time everybody you know, and then just start to categorize them. And that way you at least have front of mind a plan for when you have 15 minutes and you want to make some calls. So you're not saying, I'm stuck in an airport, I can start calling people. Well, geez, I don't know who to call. You have your list already there ready for you.
Makes sense. And I guess that's the same strategy you can utilize as you plan to exit the workforce and you plan to return. Who can help me get back to where I am? Who should I keep in constant contact with as I'm out to make sure I'm aware of what's happening and evolving, so that when you start interviewing again, you kind of know who are the players, what's adapted, what's changed. So I think it's a very smart and strategic plan. I love it. I love the idea.
And I also want to address the fact that this has come up a lot lately. Well, I don't like to bother people. I don't like to ask for help. And this comes up all the time. And what I tell people is, think about how you feel when somebody asks you for help. You feel great when someone asks you for help. If I were to call you and say, hey, Tony, I need your help. I'm going to be in New York, and I want to meet so-and-so, and I see you know them. Wouldn't you be delighted to help me?
Of course.
Right.
You thought of me. Yeah, because you thought of me.
People want to help. Yeah. So a lot of people, this has happened like maybe 3 times in the past 2 weeks. The women that I work with have said, well, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to be, it's not a bother. People like to help people. So that's another mindset shift.
What was that moment for you throughout your career where I guess you realized that this was such a serious problem, and I guess what was the moment that the light bulb hit? Like I need to share my story, do my best like educating others. What was that exact moment, if you're comfortable sharing it?
I'm very comfortable sharing it. It's also in the book. I was sitting in a meeting in Boston, and there was probably 14 people at the meeting room table, and I was the subject matter expert on the topic, and the person leading the meeting was asking me a question, and my male colleague, we'll call him Ethan, responded for me.
Yeah, we're leaving Mike alone.
We'll leave Mike alone. So I'm like, he wasn't asked the question, and B, it's not his area, so why is he answering? But okay. And then it happened again. I was asked the question, Nancy, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? Ethan pipes in, blah, blah, blah. And I looked around the room, and this was many years ago. I looked around the room and I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Am I on mute? And this was an in-person meeting. So It was kind of funny and very smart alecky. And everybody kind of looked at me, and the guy leading the meeting, he said, you know what? She's right. We need to let her speak. And I said what I wanted to say. I answered the question. We carried on the meeting. And I remember thinking, like, I'm an extrovert. I'm the youngest of 4. I'm in your face. It is the only way you got hurt in my house. If you didn't speak, you didn't get hurt. So I thought about all of the women out there who are timid and are introverts and would never in a million years raise their hand and say, excuse me, I'm speaking. Would never in a million years think to do that. And I said, this is it. This is my calling. I have to go help these women unmute themselves. I have to. And I left a few weeks later.
Wow.
Fast forward, the guy running the meeting, his daughter read my book, and she said he remembers that meeting. He remembers the meeting, and it was a long time ago. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny.
So I have a question. So I'm assuming that's how the name of the book came to be, or you can tell us a little bit about how the name came to life. But in a situation like that, where you did step up, I think it could have been taken two different ways. That you're being aggressive, or you are I guess the question is, should you be making a joke to get your point across? Because now I feel like you're not setting the right tone because it's a joking way, or is that a defense? A defense. I don't know what the word is. Is that a way
defensive?
For you to deflect non-aggression to the person, but make sure they're aware? I don't know the word. I probably did it completely incorrect, but I hopefully you get the point.
That is an excellent question. If I had it to do over again, I would not have done that. Because my natural inclination is to make a joke, and I knew everybody in the room, and it was fine, and people remembered it, right? It was memorable. What I would have done in retrospect, and that I've done since, is very nicely and calmly and politely said, "Excuse me, Ethan. When I'm finished, you can have your chance."
Mm-hmm.
Or remember the vice presidential debates and Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, I'm speaking, right? She was well trained on that because she knew that Mike Pence was going to interrupt her. She knew that it was going to be highly irritating. And I don't know if you watched it like I did, and if you didn't, watch it on YouTube. He interrupted her 3 times. And the first time she was polite. The second time she was again polite, but a little more strident. And the third time she said, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." And if she hadn't taken the high road those first couple times, everybody would have been all over her for being strident or, being too aggressive. And the conversation would have been about how she acted, not what she was saying. So, and I teach this, if you can take a step back and understand it's got nothing to do with you, and, be kind but firm. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I'll get to you in a second, right? Excuse me, I heard you. I'll get to you in 1 second. That's okay, right? So it's trying to stay calm when you're not, because if you don't, and if you're defensive, you'll lose the room, and women cannot afford to lose the room. We cannot.
Interesting. And I know I asked you about the title of the book. Oh, go, Irvin. Go.
I was going to say, I feel sometimes folks can, and incorrectly at that, misinterpret, assertiveness with being like a aggressive or defensive. Does that? I guess like how. I guess you did just go over how to combat that a bit, but just to dig deeper a little, is it I feel that may be unavoidable sometimes if you're just in a room full of bias or ignorant folks, which sometimes is outside of your control. So professionally, when you're trying to advance, I guess where's the balance of being assertive or just like straight up like you guys are going crazy in here, and being a bit more I guess straightforward.
Yeah, unfortunately, the women are judged much differently than men, and in the book, what I say, and I say this knowing that sometimes this is triggering for some women, is you have to start it with a smile. You have to pause and put a big smile on your face, because if you don't, they're going to say you're a bitch. 100%. 100%. So let's go back to Kamala. The first time she did it, and watch it, I'm telling you, watch it. The first time she did it, excuse me, I'm speaking. Very nice, very polite. Second time, excuse me, I'm speaking. And then the third time, no smile on her face, hand up, excuse me, I'm speaking. And again, had she started with that, it would have been game over. It might have even cost her the win. It would have been game over. So yes, Derb, women are judged differently, treated differently, perceived differently. And that's why I say they have to go out of their way, myself included. I'll even start a sentence, or when I was leading teams, I'm very passionate. I need you guys to understand I'm not mad, I'm just passionate. Because if I didn't, they'd be like, oh, she's all up, whatever. And then, no, I'm just really passionate about it. Or I have wicked high energy. I want you guys to understand that I'm a high energy person. I'm not upset. I'm just high energy. You ever heard a man do that? No.
Good point.
No.
Good point. Did you watch the Supreme Court hearings?
I did.
What were your thoughts about that interaction and from both parties? I felt Ms. Jackson did an extremely great job staying poised throughout the entire thing. What were your thoughts about how she handled that situation?
So this is very interesting. I haven't talked about this. Just you asking me, I'm literally getting choked up. I thought she was a pro. I thought there was no question that she was qualified. I'm so grateful it came out the way it did. But you'll see look at Brett Kavanaugh and how he acted.
Exactly, that's what I was asking. Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was poised, she was thoughtful, she was calm, she was respectful. She paused a lot, and I don't know what she was thinking. I can only say if it were me, that pause, and I teach that in the book too, would have been, okay, I'm about to lose it right now. Like, this is so unfair. This is such bullshit. This is so inexcusable that you take that pause to just contain yourself. She was beyond reproach. And by the way, she's not Miss Jackson anymore. She's Justice Jackson.
Sorry, Justice Jackson. Yes.
No. I know. I'm totally kidding. I'm kidding. Supreme Court Justice Jackson. I mean, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was absolutely. She was a role model for everyone, male or female. Fire under pressure, but pressure under fire. I would be interested to know how long she practiced and how many run-throughs she did, and how long she trained, and how many role plays. I don't know, but the parallel, politics aside, between her and Kavanaugh is staggering. And this happens all the time in the corporate world, all the time.
Definitely. So, you've given a lot of gems on the call so far. When you're focused on just your goals and the task at hand, and dealing, sometimes maybe you deal with scrutiny or any type of like obstacles that get thrown your way, or distractions. How do you stay focused and block out the noise, stay locked in and level-headed?
I love that question. So I, probably a couple of years ago, put together what I call my Thrive checklist. It is legit a checklist. This is everything that I know I need to do to be at my best. So it's bed early, meditate, whatever, 10, 15 minutes a day, get some physical exercise, drink water, whatever. And when I feel myself slipping away from myself, that is what I will do. I will say, I literally pull it out. Have some turmeric tea, do this, read a book, the things that I love to do, because I just had this conversation with somebody. The hamster wheel is back. It is back. We are back. Everybody's back. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take care of yourself, you only have yourself to blame. So you need to look at, what is it that I can do that brings me back to me, and then go do it.
Awesome. I like that.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to be running a CEO series next. It's one that we're going to be launching. And I know you mentioned that you've coached professionally CEOs. So could you tell us a little bit about what that's about? What do you try to focus on? What is a consistent trend you've seen with the different CEOs you spoke to that you're surprised happens for each one?
I'm surprised at their lack of confidence in themselves. This is the female CEOs. And I'm not saying all female CEOs lack confidence. I'm not saying that at all. There are many powerhouses. I'm shocked at their lack of confidence and their lack of belief that, I mean, they either lead or have built a massive company, and they still listen to the demons in their head, and they still need help seeing through those. And it's okay. I mean, that's okay. That's why people hire coaches. But I mean, these are people I respect and admire, and I'm like, wow, it just blows my mind. If you want to give me somebody who's 25 years old and just starting out and lacking confidence and not sure that she has what it takes, that's to be expected. But somebody who leads a multi-million-dollar company, has a massive team, underneath them or working with them, defines the culture for the company, is hitting it on all cylinders, and still needs help. They still need help navigating the speaking up and standing out and advocating for themselves. Everybody needs it.
Awesome. And what is one tidbit in regards to about your book that you would like our listeners or readers to know about your book before we go or wrap up?
What I would say about the book is it's like an hour long, maybe 90-minute read. It is super short. It's filled with fun stories. It's like, just buy it. You'll love it. That's what I would say.
That's it, guys. Just buy it. You'll love it. Anything else from you, Dervin?
Nothing else. I did just order mine, though. I just ordered my book. So
Awesome. I wish I could sign it. Yeah.
But this was definitely a pleasure. We enjoyed the opportunity to chat with you. I think there was a lot of hidden gems, and I think by reading the book, I do believe any male or female can definitely speak up, stand up for themselves. For men, I think you'll learn how to be a better ally, because I know we all try to be allies, but we don't know, because it is difficult to figure that out sometimes, but just being authentic will definitely help. But I think this will definitely guide you there as well.